hello, and welcome to another edition of Talent Talks. I have had a chance to interview several people over the last few months on Talent Talks, and I maybe have never been so excited about a guest. Today with me, I have Dwane Lay, who is our new global head of customer success at Joveo. Hey, Dwane, just give a shout out to the crew.
Hey, how are you? How you doing, everybody?
So I'm super excited for a couple of reasons. One, Dwane's here to help, right? And we've worked together in the past, and I'm very fond of you as a person. I don't know how I'm going to like you as a coworker, but we'll talk about that here in a second.
It'll be great.
I'm sure. So before we get started, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about your background
Sure.
and specifically about your book?
Well, I do love to talk about myself, and the book is certainly a big part of that. So I grew up as an IT nerd. I'm still recovering from that. But I've spent a lot of years working in HR, running departments, rebuilding departments. I'm a Six Sigma black belt, so I'm kind of fundamentally broken and have a full-on case of OCD that comes with that. But I'm a process guy. I love process maps and kind of drawing things out. I've lived in the CS world for almost 9 years with other HR tech companies. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to come in and really have an impact for not just for Joveo, but for our clients and for the space. I think that there's some really amazing things going on here. And it was tough to pry me away from my old life, but the team here is amazing. And, getting to work with you, Jenn, of course, is a tremendous opportunity. So just exciting to be here. The book was a labor of love built around introducing lean in HR and Six Sigma processes, to HR practitioners and giving them simple ways to go in and learn how to do root cause analysis and problem solving and kind of putting a structured approach to what is very often unstructured thinking that we have when we're in a service line.
So I was very fortunate, right? Like I was gifted your book when I first met you, just randomly because we were talking about it. And although I've never read it from cover to cover, I have used it as a reference point. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm sorry, Dwane, but like that kind of book, like kind of doesn't feel like a cover to cover deal to me, right? But it was really interesting, right? I come from AT&T where we had a lot of different ways to call out process efficiency. I got some Six Sigma certification early in my career and really felt like it made a difference for how I approached not only technical setups and processes, like we would call it in TA, but also just how it organized my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk a little bit about recruitment processes today and how those principles might be helpful to someone who's listening that's either new to the role or is in some sort of transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it is, the comparison I go back to is playing golf, which I am also really bad at. But one of the things I learned is that your swing never gets better until it's the same every time. So Lean and Six Sigma is really about reducing variation and then reducing waste. So you have to make sure you're doing it the same way each time before you can really get better at it and expect it to stick. I've always been a little jealous of TA because TA has had all the data. Like there's so many great data elements available to TA practitioners. To be able to then kind of lock things down and say, this is our process. This is how things happen each time. And once you have that, you can see where those bottlenecks are. It becomes a lot easier to improve it. So the idea behind the tool set, and frankly, it's not one, the book isn't one that I ever thought somebody would want to read cover to cover. It's really a collection of tools. Like, how do I go figure out what's happening or figure out where to start with managing projects and managing improvements? So there's a lot in there around how do you build a portfolio? How do you identify the problems? And how do you kind of stack them to make sure you're working on the right things?
So it's interesting. Most TA organizations, at least at a baseline, have done some sort of process mapping, right? They have an applicant tracking system, and it in essence is facilitating their process, right? And so we have a lot of viewers out there that are always trying to make sure that their applicant tracking system is efficient, or it's actually the word I hear most is I want our applicant tracking system to not suck, right? Like, and that's a low bar, but like honestly, with some of the constraints that we have, sometimes that's really the reality of a TA professional.
Mm-hmm.
So can we just spend a minute talking about things to consider in a lean and really dialed in process from both the candidate experience and from the recruiter experience. Where should we start? Well, you want to start with the recruiter?
Well, actually, it's interesting. I got to sit on the candidate experience board for a couple of years and listen to some of those stories. And what's really interesting, so one of the foundational principles of Lean is that value is determined by the customer. And in that process, we have a couple of customers to look at. One of them from an internal side is your hiring manager, your stakeholders. But you also have your external customer, your candidates, their families, their stakeholders. Like there's a really large audience we have to think about as to like who's defining value in this process. So what I found fascinating as part of the Candy Board was listening to stories about how excited people were that they had the ability to do automated messaging, right? That they're making sure they're keeping people warm on a regular basis. Well, if you've ever been on the candidate side, you know how frustrating it is to send messages into a black hole, not know if it was received, not know if it's being looked at, and then even worse, 3 months later, getting a note saying, "Hey, we got your resume and we've closed that job, but thanks."
Right.
So, being able to use the technology available in an ATS today is important, but it's, I think, more important to recognize like what is it you're trying to accomplish. If what you're trying to accomplish is just kind of handle compliance stuff, that's fine. Building out a messaging platform and kind of just like you would with any other marketing, building like a drip campaign for these candidates to make sure that you keep them engaged, because it's not just for the one job, right? You want to have that talent available to you. Understanding what they're looking for, understanding how to communicate with them, and understanding how to keep them informed and engaged is really important. I don't think that can completely be done through automation, but you can hit the bare minimum that way. On the internal side, it's about setting your stakeholders up front, making sure your hiring managers have visibility so they know where you're at in the process. And then you've got good communication flow. We've got tools in the TA world now to do those things for us. It's just a matter of getting the discipline to use them and understanding that if it's happening outside the system, there's not visibility. You're you're cheating both your candidates and your teammates of being able to be part of that process too. So it's just about the rigor of using those systems appropriately.
And in my old world, you would be driving me crazy because none of my data would be correct. I would be hunting you down. No, yeah. So you said a lot of things in there, and I want to unpack a few of them and also give a couple of shout outs. So the first shout out, everybody knows, if they know me, I'm a huge fan of the talent board and the candies. Kevin Grossman, maybe we can have you on a future call and talk a little bit more about the data and what Dwane's talking about here and how it relates. But so with hiring managers, right? So I think about it like this, and this is an opinion, not like a lean HR question, right? Like I'm looking for your opinion, Dwane. So hiring managers don't always hire, right? Like in a lot of cases, a hiring manager may hire once every year, twice a year, 3 times a year, but really, like in my old world, half of our hiring managers probably hired once every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do we make it palatable, maybe even awesome for people that aren't really going to do this on a recurring or repetitive basis? Like, how do you really make it simple? Have you seen anything that's really great?
So there's a couple of things that I've seen that work really well. The best one, and it kind of comes out of the support world, is making sure that you've got really well documented processes with screenshots that are easy for someone to pull up and follow. Any of those kind of Q&A pieces or FAQs, in my opinion, a hiring manager should be able to get in and out in under 2 minutes to understand, how do I start this process? Who do I talk to and where do I go? Especially if you're building it off of the back of the system, making those links really easy to find, making the questions really easy to answer, pulling data out of the system as much as you can from the previous person so that they have to do the absolute bare minimum. I mean, when you've got a job you do once every 5 years, you can't be expected to really understand it. And frankly, it'll be different than it was last time. So, just making sure that it's really easy to find those directions. It's really simple to get in, put in what you need and move forward. And the TA side can pull that data and pull the other information to support that job. That's probably the biggest thing.
Well, and you're doing a really good job of sort of tying the thread about the benefits of applying a really well-documented lean process to the situation. And I used to say to my team, right, exactly what you just said there. If they're only in it once every 5 years, you can't expect them to be experts. So you need to design for simplicity. And if they're in there every day, it's a core part of their job, and you need to design for simplicity, right? Like no matter how you slice it, like keep it simple. So can you just talk a little bit more about how you've seen lean or Six Sigma practices in place in HR and some of the benefits of that?
So one of the things that I think is kind of a baseline is that we don't want to ever have to write something down twice, right? You don't want to have to. So when we talk about lean, we talk about the classic 8 waste, and they have to do with there's an anagram, Tim Would You. It's like transportation, inventory, work in progress, over production, over processing, making sure that you're handing the right amount of information to that hiring manager as they need it. And so if you wanted to dive in that in the book, you can. It's terribly nerdy, but I enjoy that kind of stuff. But one of the things we talk about is, how do we make sure that we're providing exactly what that hiring managers are going to need with the least amount of input from them possible. If we've got an existing job, we've got a system somewhere that tells us, what that job should be paid, what the range is, where they're located, what's available. I'm a really big believer in the concept that people don't fail, systems fail people. So for example, when you talk about how to lean out a process, one of the most common things I see in TA is we'll build out a job rec, we'll send it to compensation to be blessed for the job category and the ranges. We'll come back when we're ready to make an offer. We build an offer. We send it back over to compensation to be looked at and blessed again, even though they've already told us once what the range is, what they're allowing for it. So we have to go back and look through it twice, as opposed to this is the range and you can't go outside of it in the system. So we don't need a second backup to go back and check it again.
Can I just preach?
Yeah.
So I was having a conversation about job descriptions, and there's actually a blog on it on the Joveo website.
Oh.
And so it was the craziest thing to me. It just is maddening to me. So anyway, I'm just words of affirmation. So let's talk a little bit about what can organizations do right away, right, to make their processes more efficient. I think you've mentioned a few things, right, like documentation, things like that. But if I think about the beginning of the process, it's really where the applicant funnel starts and things come in. And today, you may have a dispersed model where you have some agreements with some duration-based or slot-based publishers. You might be dabbling into programmatic, maybe using Indeed. So, would I be remiss here to say using some sort of technology like Joveo to consolidate and put that in a standard workflow? Is that really like one of those practices that might be helpful in streamlining your process?
Well, I'll say if I don't believe that was true, I wouldn't be here, first of all. And there's absolutely something to be said to leveraging the technology platforms you have available to yourself and to simplifying it. When I look at in my past lives, when I've talked about different vendors, like I don't want to have 15 vendors I work with. I want to have one, and I want to have somebody I trust that's an actual partner in what I'm trying to accomplish, and that's really important. And that really kind of goes to my philosophies around customer success. Like our job is to be proactive and make sure that our customers are the heroes internally. And that's more than just being reactive and solving, problems when they come up. It's being consultative and helping them find opportunities up front. Programmatic is such a great tool to have to make sure that you're spending properly, that you're getting all of the value for your dollars you possibly can. I think not leveraging something like that is a huge miss for our TA partners. Other things I look at, being able to understand how to generate and how to classify projects, how to value them. So, if I'm going to spend 20% of my time working on outside projects, man, I better get the right projects to work on, because that's a lot of time and effort. It can have huge impacts. And I've got 1,000 stories of, just the ability to, and I've said this several times this week, the ability to ask dumb questions and then sit there patiently for an answer goes a really long way in trying to figure out where your opportunities are. What we call going to the Gemba, go talk to the people who do the jobs. The people who know where the heartache is in the TA process are your TA team. Like they're the ones. Go ask them. It's everyone's going to be a little bit different, but the starting points are the same. Good conversations, good questions, honest answers, and understanding not just what you want to have happen, what's actually happening on your teams goes a long way.
No, I think that's awesome, and I feel like this is a really good first look into lean HR practices and designing your processes for the right people and all those things. So now that you work here, we'll have you back and dig deep into some topics. Maybe we'll bring on Kevin or another guest too.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So totally impromptu, but just because I can. So I have some copies of Lean HR.
What?
I
There are
do.
copies out there. I thought they were sold out everywhere in every major
Of
store.
course, they're sold out in every major market.
I
But
didn't know that.
I have acquired or have the ability to acquire a few copies. So for all of our viewers out there, when you watch this, make it all the way to the end of this fabulous discussion and hear this. If you repost this video and tag me in it, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, I will send books out until I run out. So yeah,
That's
Dwayne's
a
like,
good
huh?
deal. I
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody knows my mom's not eligible because she, I think, has the most copies of the book.
Brenda, you're not eligible. Excellent. Well, hey, Dwayne, welcome to Joveo, and thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
I can't wait. Thanks so much, Jen.